Welcome to today's Explainer. So, we're diving into a topic today that is honestly quietly reshaping the very foundation of how we live, how we work, and even how we interact with power. Think about it for a second. When was the last time you had to, say, renew a passport, or pay taxes, or maybe get a government permit? Right? Historically, doing that meant completely sacrificing your entire Tuesday just to go stand in these endlessly long lines, dealing with massive stacks of paperwork, navigating this totally confusing maze of bureaucratic offices. But today we're witnessing a monumental transformation. Because e-governance, it's not just an IT upgrade. It's not just some fancy new website for your local municipality. It is a fundamental shift in the actual social contract between citizens and the state. It totally changes who holds information, how incredibly fast services get delivered, and ultimately how accountable our leaders are to us.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. Our source material actually puts it perfectly, stating, it is a shift from traditional manual systems to a digital platform. I love that. That one single sentence just beautifully contrasts the heavy, paper-laden analog past with the hyper-connected digital present we're living in now. I mean, for centuries, the state was quite literally built on paper. Dusty filing cabinets were the physical embodiment of government memory, and if a file was lost, well, your identity, your property, your rights, they could literally be lost right along with it. So, moving to a digital platform, it means taking that incredibly fragile manual system and converting it into instant, searchable, and potentially highly secure data. But how exactly do we define this massive undertaking?
Well, just to ground us in the facts, let's look at the formal, textbook definition. E-governance is the use of digital devices, the internet, and communication technologies to provide government services and information to citizens. Now notice the key components here. It's not just about, having a random computer sitting on a desk in some back office somewhere. It's about the active use of the internet and communication networks to actually deliver real services. It's kind of like an invisible bridge, connecting the massive, often intimidating apparatus of the state directly to that smartphone in your pocket or the laptop sitting in your living room.
But of course, an entire government can't just be one single website, right? A modern state is a remarkably complex web of relationships. So to really understand how e-governance actually functions on the ground, we have to look at the four distinct directions that data flows. We call these the four pillars: government to citizen, government to business, government to government, and government to employee. Basically, every single digital initiative a country rolls out is going to fall into one of these four vital categories.
Now, what's really interesting here is how e-governance sits right smack in the center, basically acting as the beating heart of the entire system. And branching out from it, we have these four distinct nodes. Each node represents a totally different audience with totally different needs. Because think about it, a regular citizen doesn't need the same digital tools as a massive multinational corporation, right? And a police officer definitely needs completely different data access than, say, a public school teacher. By compartmentalizing these data flows, governments can build specialized, really highly efficient networks rather than just relying on one clunky, one-size-fits-all system. Let's actually break these down a little bit further.
Let's start by contrasting the outward-facing services with the internal infrastructure. On one hand, we have government to citizen, or G2C. These are the everyday services you and I interact with. We're talking about things like booking a hospital appointment online, checking educational exam results, or, renewing a driver's license right from your couch. This is the very public face of digital modernization. But then on the flip side, we have government to government, or G2G. This is the invisible, internal backbone that literally makes absolutely everything else possible. We're talking live fingerprint scanning and verification across encrypted databases, e-police networks that share criminal records instantly, and e-courts processing massive case files digitally. It's essentially the state securely talking to itself, instantly verifying who you are, and keeping the heavy machinery of justice and administration moving quietly behind the scenes.
So, beyond just citizens and internal infrastructure, how does a government actually connect with the broader economy and its own workforce? Well, that brings us to G2B and G2E. Government to business is all about removing the immense friction that usually stifles economic growth. Instead of a small business owner bleeding days of productivity, running from office to office just to get a basic license or pay corporate taxes, e-taxation and secure electronic portals allow businesses to comply with regulations swiftly and transparently. It's a total game changer. Then, we have government to employee, or G2E. Look, a government is really only as effective as its civil servants, right? By utilizing things like e-learning methods and consolidated knowledge-sharing databases, the state can continuously train its workforce. It ensures that a civil servant working in a remote, rural office has the exact same accurate information as someone working directly at the Capitol.
Now, understanding all this theory is great and all, but to really grasp the impact of this digital shift, we need to look at concrete reality. So, we're going to use the government of Nepal as our primary case study today. We're going to see exactly how these digital pillars are constructed in real time to actually serve millions of people.
And this brilliantly illustrates the practical application of what we've been talking about. The official Nepal portal acts as this master centralized directory. It's really cool to see how intuitively it's organized for the end user. Whether a citizen is looking for the Office of the Prime Minister for executive updates, the Ministry of Finance, the Department of Immigration for travel, or the Nepal Rashtra Bank, which is their central bank, it is all completely consolidated into a single, unified digital entry point. It literally eliminates the absolute nightmare of having to track down dozens of disjointed, independent ministry websites. It's just a perfect real-world example of a G2C portal that genuinely prioritizes accessibility. Digging even deeper into the executive branch, let's look at some of the highly specialized portals actively operating right now within Nepal's Office of the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. They utilize an integrated office management system to streamline all their internal documents, which is a textbook G2G example. They also have a public asset management system to track state resources. They've even digitized physical security with the Singha Darbar Gate Pass system, allowing digital entry management to the country's main administrative complex. Plus, there's a message gateway system for mass communication and, honestly, perhaps most importantly, the Hello Sarkar grievance system. This provides a direct digital channel for regular, everyday citizens to voice their concerns and actually hold public entities accountable. It's pretty impressive stuff.
So, we've seen the websites, we've seen the systems, but let's shift to the bigger picture here and see how this all builds out. Why do governments spend literal billions of dollars to modernize in the first place? Well, it's about fundamentally upgrading the operational capacity and the ethical transparency of the state itself.
Let's look at the breakdown impartially. The administrative advantages are, frankly, massive. We're talking high efficiency, real-time transparency, and a direct, measurable reduction in corruption simply by eliminating face-to-face interactions with officials where bribery might happen. Theoretically, a citizen living in a remote mountain village now has the exact same access to state services as someone living right next door to the Capitol building. But the risks are equally profound. The digital divide is very, very real. I mean, a slick new portal is entirely useless if the population lacks internet access or basic illiteracy. There's also the terrifying, very modern risk of widespread identity theft and a lack of public trust. And fundamentally, if a manual system breaks, a clerk can still just take a paper form, but if a digital system crashes, the entire government essentially grinds to halt.
I actually want you to pause and really think about this for a second. What happens to those without the internet? As we rush headfirst into this brilliantly efficient cloud-based future, what is the human cost for the populations who get left behind? If basic government services become completely digital only, does a lack of an internet connection essentially strip a person of their basic citizenship rights?
So the absolutely crucial point here is that a modernized state cannot just sit back and celebrate its technology victories, it has to actively combat these systemic limitations. The digital divide means unequal access to technology, and that risks creating a two-tiered society, the connected and the disconnected. Furthermore, system technical failures, they're no longer just an IT headache. They represent a complete disruption of essential, life-saving state services. Plus, a lack of digital literacy requires governments to invest not just in fancy new software, but in massive public education campaigns. And finally, governments really have to audit their own laws before digitizing them. Otherwise, you just end up with the automation of inflexible, outdated services that end up frustrating citizens even faster than before.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought to carry forward. We have clearly seen how e-governance structurally reshapes the state. It creates unprecedented efficiency, transparency, and interconnectedness between governments, businesses, and citizens. It's an incredible tool. But a tool is only as good as its accessibility. So, does true modernization merely mean coding faster digital platforms and sleeker portals? Or is the true test of a modern government its ability to ensure that absolutely no citizen is left behind in the analog past? It is a highly delicate, incredibly high-stakes balance. And how nations choose to navigate this exact challenge, that is what will define the future of global democracy and public service. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning how your own digital footprint interacts with the systems that govern us all.